Hi, I'm Dr. Mike Lloyd. I'm the director of the CTAD Clinic, and I'm going to be doing a slightly different video today because a friend of mine who has had DID, Dissociative Identity Disorder, for many years has asked what I thought of the latest Moon Knight series that's one of the Marvel creations on the Disney Channel. I haven't seen this, it's not a character that I'm aware of, and I do read a lot of Marvel comics, but I have not seen, I've not really read any of the Moon Knight stuff, so I've come at it very early on. So I thought it would be interesting just to put my thoughts about the series on here. I've watched one episode yesterday, and I thought I will just, as I watch the episodes, I'll just let people know what I think of the depiction of DID within this series. This isn't about spoilers or content. I'm not really going to be talking about the story of the show, and what happens and all that kind of stuff. I'm just going to be looking at how DID is being shown on screen, because we're all aware that there have been many efforts and attempts for this through television and movies, and it's not always particularly good. There's a lot of tropes, there's a lot of stereotypes, it's often very serial killery and very murdery, and it's used as a reveal at the end, as sort of like the big, oh gosh, they've got DID and that's how it's all happened. And it's a bit boring and a bit run-of-the-mill. So I thought I'd have a look at this Moon Knight series, and just going to put some thoughts on. Here's the character on screen in the comics, and here's what one of the sort of the Marvel posters looks like. It stars Oliver Isaac, and I didn't realise also has Ethan Hawke in, who I'm a great fan of, so I was really pleased when Ethan sort of turned up in the show and thought, yes, brilliant, okay, I'm absolutely into this. Oliver Isaac I thought was exceptional. I thought he's a wonderful actor, so Marvel have clearly put a lot of thought and effort into this, and they have thrown money at it. The production value is very good, the sound, the editing, the cinematography, it's wonderful stuff. So it's really high quality Marvel TV, I think. One of the things that really sort of interested me from the start is that it's not a reveal. They really put some effort into talking about DID straight away. So if I read what the description of the episode or the series says, it leads with this. When Stephen Grant, a mild-mannered gift shop employee, becomes plagued with blackouts and memories of another life, he discovers he has dissociative identity disorder and shares a body with mercenary Mark Spector. They must navigate their complex identities, etc., etc., plot. So right from the off, Marvel is saying very clearly that this is a character that has DID. So maybe you knew that if you'd read the comics, if that's what it shows, I really don't know. But for people new to this, which I imagine is the majority of people, then it's saying from the off this person has DID, and I think that's wonderful because that really shows us that this is something that he's dealing with, and it's not just going to be used as some sort of amazing reveal at the end of the show. So I watched the first episode yesterday, and I have to say I was very impressed by it, and if I hadn't been watching it fairly late, I would have easily watched a second episode straight away. So it's got that sort of binge-worthy quality to it. It's really nice. The pacing is really good. The setup is really interesting. And I think that the character of Stephen Grant, as played by Oliver Isaac, is a really interesting character because he's very normal. He's very ordinary. Mild-mannered is quite a comics sort of description. That's a little sort of throwback to the old days. And this is something that I think was done very well. He struggles, he's got a job as working in a gift shop in a museum that's currently putting on a show of Egyptian antiquities, which I think is where a lot of the higher end dissociation comes from. Because what happens is we're shown that this is a character who has become used to dissociation for quite a long time. So what he's been doing, and we're given this as sort of just little glimpses into the character of Stephen Grant's life, that he has put in coping strategies to manage his dissociation to try and limit the negative aspects of this within his life. So for example, within his bed, he's got some restraints. He's covered his bedroom with sand so he can tell if there are footprints, so that he can see whether he's left the bed, and he puts tape up around the door frames, and there's lots of locks on the door. So this is someone who has become used to dissociating, probably at night, leaving his apartment, finding himself in different places, becoming very upset, very disorientated and confused. There's a denial aspect of this because he's not really challenging the nature of what's going on. He simply puts these strategies in, these restraints and these ways of telling what he's been doing to limit the dissociation. So he's not about He's not approaching the dissociation in a way of trying to meet it head on and try and understand what's going on. It's all about damage limitation for this character. And I think that sounds really very true. That's probably not necessarily restraints and sand and stuff, but I think most people with DID in the early stages of getting to their diagnosis together are trying to deny the severity of it, and they're trying to work out ways that they can really limit the damage that's been caused by the dissociation. So jobs are okay, but they're never really going to be successful. He's clearly intelligent, but he's only working in the gift shop and he could be doing so much more. His relationships are off. He can meet people and he can talk to people. The best conversation that he had was with a guy who was literally not talking to him at all, and it was a really interesting sequence. But it shows that his ability to maintain long-term, in-depth, proper relationships is really, really problematic for him. And these are accurate descriptions of a lot of what people with DID have to go through, that they can get on just about well enough, but they can't really flourish, they can't really prosper. The character Stephen Grant is clearly distressed and disorientated, and there's an increasing level of this dissociation that goes through the show because it's an adventure story. So, you know, the stakes pile up and more things happen, which is understandable. That's taking it away from the real life of things. But I thought what was really good is that it started looking at this nature of dissociative threshold. It wasn't stated as such, but that was what was there to be seen, that his emotional intensity is getting higher and higher and higher, and therefore the significance and the seriousness of the dissociative events are increasing. And what happens is it moves from just being him having sort of lapses of time and lapses of chronology, sort of not really getting his days right, not really getting his time of day right, always being late for things, into actual like losses of time through a kind of this blink, blink, blink approach, where his emotional threshold gets really high. So the events stress him out, he gets really anxious and really stressed, and then suddenly has these sort of blink, blink, blink phases, and time changes around him completely. So, and we see that from the perspective of ourselves, so we don't know what's gone on. We're left with the same disorientation as Stephen Grant is, and we don't know what's happened, but we know something has happened because there's the evidence of it all around. So whether that's a fight sequence that takes place, or that his fish suddenly changes and he knows it's not his fish, and he realizes that he's lost time. There is also evidence that other people are using different name for him, which we're not sure. Is it just because that person isn't paying attention, or is it actually are different names being used? So could there be more than just Stephen Grant and this kind of Mark Spector character who we don't really know what's going on? He loses, he has difficulties with his body, so he sees his reflection and he sees what he thinks is a sort of a different version of himself looking back, and there are times when he's not able to control his own body properly. And these would be depersonalization type experiences, and again, really interesting that there was an element of co-consciousness in one of those where he was thinking, talking, being Stephen Grant, but his body was doing, or parts of his body were doing something that he could not control or understand where that was coming from. So that was a really interesting depiction, and again we see this in the clinical picture, working with people where they are present, they are conscious, and yet their bodies are performing in ways that they don't want them to do. And that could be, for example, things like self-harm or any of those kind of things. And in his case, it's kind of an exciting, amusing thing, but it's depersonalization at the heart of it, and that was, I thought, was very well done indeed. I didn't see any examples of dissociative fugue within this, so it's not like he's losing track of himself. He's clearly confused, and his identity is changing and shifting, as we believe within these phases, because his character is, he as a person is doing things that he does not feel that he would ever be capable of. So a mild-mannered man working in a gift shop, very unlikely he'd be able to sort of beat up a load of random thugs, but he does, and that would be extraordinary in the extreme. So we know that there is something else going on in terms of the alteration of his identity into a character who is able to perform tasks and manage behaviours in a way that the nature of the Stephen Grant character simply cannot. So again, that's quite a good depiction of the identity alteration that we see very prevalently in DID. There are times when or throughout the episode, there are times when Stephen Grant hears a voice and he sort of believes it's coming from outside. We're led to believe as the viewer that this is inside his head, but this is not a psychotic type thing. This is a conversation that is happening to him that is relatively normal in a very abnormal context, but it's relating to him. It's using his name, it's talking to him, and it's able to and fro in a proper dialogue form. So this is much more the sort of the voices that are heard within OSDD and DID, where a person is able to talk to the voice, hear a response back, and it makes sense. It might be very unpleasant, it might be very distressing, and it might be very confusing, but the actual nature of it is that the conversation makes sense, and that's something that we see depicted very frequently. So thinking about the overall picture, I think it's definite that they would have got some very good advice about how to show DID within this TV show. Oscar Isaac has clearly put a lot of effort and thought into how this is going to be shown. I think his acting was fantastic. The demonstration of distress and confusion and acceptance and denial all at the same time, sometimes all in the same scene, I think was wonderful. So I really hope that they've got some good expert by experience advice here, saying if you were a character in this, if you're a person in this situation of this character, how might you emotionally react? And sometimes it's with high-end emotions, and sometimes it's completely flat and completely numb. And I thought that was really wonderful. It is a show that I'm going to continue watching. Like I said at the start, I thought it was very entertaining, very well done. I am going to continue looking at this, and I'll keep putting out what I think might be happening. But if we just sort of stopped at that stage and looked at this and thought, okay, on the basis of this show, if we didn't know that DID was happening, if we weren't led with that, where would we go with it? And I'd say, diagnostically speaking, we've got a diagnostic criteria of dissociative amnesia in there, but without fugue. We've got serious levels of depersonalization going on. We've got some identity confusion. We've got a great deal of identity alteration. We've got severity, we've got frequency, we've got intensity. It disrupts his job, it disrupts his relationships, and he's not able to really find any explanation or any way out of that. So it's clearly taking place over a fairly long period of time, and it's recent. It's happening in the current day, and it doesn't seem to be triggered by traumatic events. It's triggered actually by just the context of the change in his job. So I think looking at this show, if it wasn't leading with DID, I would come to the conclusion at the end of the show, as I'm sure most of you would, and say that guy has got OSDD at the least, but the likelihood is that this is DID being played out. And I think that makes it work very well. It's obviously a superhero story, so the stuff that goes on and whatever this Mark Spector is capable of doing will be superheroic, and that's absolutely fine because it's entertainment and it's a Marvel show. But they haven't taken this as a sort of a mental condition and made the character look crazy or made him absolutely look to be like some sort of dangerous or whatever. He's just normal, he's ordinary, and I think that was a really good depiction. So overall, I think Marvel have done an excellent job. Remains to be seen whether it continues, but first episode in, very entertaining, very good depiction of DID, really made sense, really got into the character and allowed us to see him with a lot of empathy and understanding about how difficult his life would be given what he's going through. We don't know why. I don't know if there'll be a traumatic element to all that sort of stuff. I guess there will be, and I suppose we'll be given that as reveals later on in the show. So if you want to keep coming with the normal CTAD clinic content, please do like and subscribe. I'll put some of these videos out as I watch the Moon Knight series. Please let me know what your thoughts are. I've not done anything like this before. Like I said, I did this as sort of a mini challenge for my friend. So please put some comments in and let me know what you think of this. And if you watch the show, I hope you enjoy it. So between now and when I next see you, please do take great care.